fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm thrilled to be bringing, I think, back on the podcast, Unicorn Society member, dear friend, Ben Fogel from Epic Fitness. How are you, my friend?
Michael, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited about our chat today. This is
Yeah,
great.
I'm so glad to do this solo. I think we were just talking before we started recording that you were last on, I think, for a group conversation. We did a bunch of like group chats during COVID. And so I'm excited to have you back one-on-one. So dear listeners, you might remember Ben Fogel is the owner of Epic Fitness in Salt Lake City, Utah. And you've been a Unicorn Society member for a bunch of years now. How many years?
I think we're going on 5, Michael. I've been in since I think 2017, 2018, so close to number
Huh?
5. So
Yeah, what a treat. Oh my gosh. Well, your business was doing well when we met you and has been crushing even harder since we've known you. So I'm excited for you to share maybe a few lessons learned recently with our listeners. But before we dive in, maybe just share a little bit more about Epic Fitness and about your journey as a gym owner.
yeah, so I mean, real quickly, so I've been in business now for the last decade, longer than a decade now. It's been since 2009. I've actually owned the business, but we've been brick and mortar since 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And we just recently moved about a year and a half ago into a new space. We bought a building, we bought a
Amazing.
commercial building and remodeled the whole thing. And it's been an amazing experience. We did that during COVID, which was a little crazy, but it was really rewarding. So we have our own building. We've rented to ourselves, which is nice. And we really specialize in semi-private personal training. We have just under 200 members, and yeah, that's kind of what we do.
That's it. I love that. Well, you know what? We should maybe, if we have time, this podcast, because now that you mentioned you all bought your own building, everyone's going to want us to talk about that. So I want to make a note. Maybe we'll circle back
Yeah,
and cover that because we already picked a few other things to talk about first. Well, let's dive in. I know you recently were telling me a story about a recent customer's first impression of you and other gyms. So I want to talk a little bit about first impressions. Maybe if you want to start by telling our listeners a story you shared with me.
yeah. So this is just it kind of secured my whole idea of like the client's experience, that first experience they get, the initial phone call they make, and how important that is to a business.
Mm-hmm.
In our business, this gal, her name's Tahita. So she's of a different, descent. So she calls with an accent, right? So it was
Mm-hmm.
hard to understand her at first, and she called us. And what we learned about this phone call after the fact was she called about 4 or 5 other gyms before us
Yep.
and got just not a positive experience from the call. So she got either told to find what she was looking for online, to just not what she was looking for. She just had a negative experience. Then she called us. And when I asked her, like what made her come in, because she had never stepped foot in a gym before, never had this
Wow.
experience. So she was just a newbie. And she said, it was literally the warm conversation I had with Megan over the phone is what got me in here. She answered all my questions. She was very she walked me through it very slowly, got me to understand kind of what to expect in my first session with you guys, and I felt really comfortable coming in for a gal that's never been in a gym before. And so I was comparing that to like my wife telling me a story of we were looking at getting new home warranties, and she was making the same deal, right? Making the round of calls and called this one lady that was highly referred, by the way. And this gal told her, she was looking for different coverages, and would we be covered with this and that? And she said, well, you can find all the information online, and not just give us an answer, like, and save us a step of going online to look at it ourselves. And Amy, my wife, hung up and was like, well, I'm not going to use them if they're just going to be like that over the phone. And I'm assuming that
Yeah.
Tahita had the similar experience, right? Like, I'm not going to go to that gym, click, 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 click. And by the fifth or sixth one, she's like, you guys weren't the closest to me. I called the ones closest to me. But that obstacle didn't matter at that point, right? It was just that first experience and how important it has to be. Like, you answer the phone with a smile, right? They can feel that and hear that over the phone. You just make sure you answer questions, and you kind of always roll back to like what they're looking for. And it was really cool. So I let Megan, our manager, know, and she was super excited about
Yeah,
that.
great story. And it's such a great example, Ben, of just like our need as, customer service providers to just be excellent at the basics.
Mhm.
And that in and of itself is a unique value proposition, right? Because whether it's a phone call or an email or a DM, it doesn't matter the kind of outreach that clients make, but that first impression of us being warm and friendly and helpful and patient, like that makes all the difference. I love that extra bit you shared at the end there, which is you're not even the most convenient place for her to go. You're
Yeah.
not even the most convenient option, but she's willing to travel because you stood out from the crowd by being warm, friendly, accessible, patient.
Yeah, it's also the reminder is like the first impression isn't the first time they come into the gym, right? Because that was
Mm-hmm.
like with me, she already had that first impression with the first phone call she made
Yep.
to inquire. So it was really really important.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great reminder to all of our listeners. Go pay attention to all the first impressions, whether it's your Google profile or your phone call experience or what happens when someone DMs you on Instagram, right? Like no matter what it is, what is the first impression you're making? So just unpacking that a little bit more, Fogel. What do you do to train your team to give that great first impression? Why did Megan do such a good job?
Yeah. So at our front desk, we have a phone inquiry script. It's like literally typed out, and it's like she pulls it when she answers the phone. Everybody pulls it, and it has like a plastic sleeve over it, so you can literally put a little, you know, a little marker on it, and or dry erase, and mark all the things, the name, phone number, all that stuff. And we practice it, right? So in our team meetings, we practice it every, about once or twice a quarter. We go over the phone inquiry because it's so important, and we go over kind of like and so she's practiced it 100 times before she's gone live, and so she feels so comfortable with it. That's been the biggest thing, is just making sure that everybody, it's a standard operating procedure at our gym. If you call our phone number right now and if they don't answer and say upgrading lives at Epic Fitness, this is Ben, who am I speaking with, like literally, like we're ahead of the game because we're getting the person information, we're starting the conversation, we're the ones leading the way. And that's what kind of making our team confident in doing that's what's important in
Yeah, it
practicing.
really sets a tone. It sets a tone, right? And I just want to unpack and repeat a few things you said because it's a lot all in one.
Yeah.
Which is there is a standard. There's a written standard for how we handle a phone call for a new person. Not only is it written down, but it is easily accessible. It's actually printed out and kind of laminated at the front desk. And there is a cultural norm that when people answer the phone, they pull it out and physically use it. No matter how many times you've answered the phone before, it's there. And in addition to that, the things you mentioned are like we practice. We actually talk
Yeah.
about this in our team meetings and role play actually going through it because we don't practice to get it right. We practice until we can't get it wrong, right?
Yeah.
And that mantra I think is so crucial with SOPs like this, which people take for granted.
100%.
Yeah, we just think, oh, everyone knows how to be friendly on the phone. It'll be fine. Well, that's not what we're going for. We're not just going for friendly. We're going for friendly and effective. You know, and to be
Yes.
effective, you need to practice all that. So, yeah, good for you, my friend. I think that's such a great example for everyone. You know what? I keep talking about this, but in the interest of talking about buying a building, I'm going to move forward faster.
Go.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about our second topic, which is I want to talk a little bit more. This is related but different. This is I asked you, some other wins you were having recently. You said one of the wins is that in part because you've been a Unicorn Society member, and we beat this topic senseless. We're always talking about it. You said some recent wins have been that you've been working on creating all the SOPs that were maybe missing in the business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're specifically working with one of your managers to help go through the business and say, where are we missing standards and instructions? So can you talk a little bit about what that is looking like for you?
Yeah. So I'll just start by saying, like, in the Unicorn Society, you guys beat this over our heads. And
Yes.
I finally got it, like, when we did the Zingerman's
Uh-huh.
talk with, or maybe it was a call during COVID
Yeah, I
with
think it
them.
was maybe last year or something. For those of you who don't know, Zingerman's is a company, a family of businesses based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Mark and I have taken many of their courses, big fans of their founder. And so we had one of their staff members come and speak to our Unicorn Society group about creating SOPs. So that's the context. Go ahead, Fogel.
Yeah. Yeah. So literally it started like when they made us basically write an SOP for making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or for tying your shoes. And like when me and my wife were doing it, we're like getting upset at each other because we're like, no, this is wrong. Like I can't finish it. Right. And
Yep.
so by going at it that way, right, to make it so easy that you can't get wrong. Or the thought is, what they also said was, you can literally pick somebody up off the street, and
Mm-hmm.
you could bring them in to do your, the expert SOP, which is completely written out. It could be a couple paragraphs or however long it needs to be, that somebody off the street could come in and actually like enter a contract into our mind body system. That's how good it has to be, right? And so that's how we test it. Well, we don't test it by bringing it to a person off the street, but we test it
That's
by
the
just
idea,
making
right?
sure. Yeah, that's the idea. Making sure our team can do that, right? And any one of our team members could do one of the highest level tasks that they may not do every day, but we could test it on them, like a coach doing a managerial thing. But that's really changed our business because I made our with our manager and got her to take everything, every little thing in the business, however small or however large it is, and just SOP everything. And so we have these layers of SOPs where, like in Zingerman's and how you guys taught us, to have an expert SOP and then a beginner's SOP, where you could literally like, and then like what's the other one called, where it's just like the quick SOP, like the done.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Sometimes it's
so
just kind of a quality control checklist kind of
yeah, and
tool. Yeah.
yeah, for us, it just we revisit these every week in our team meetings for the ones that are most important and the ones we want to review, or the ones we just have just done the SOP when we tested on our team. And so I think it's critical, like, that everybody in your business should know about every SOP, even if they're not doing the thing, uh, but also that we're all on the same page. And so it's really helped me step away from the business much more in the last 12 months, but also allowed my team to kind of carry the torch, but also make, like, they're okay making this mistakes. I always say, you're okay making the mistake once, that's on me. Let's redo the SOP or whatever we need to do to make it really fluid. But if you make the mistake twice after we make the correction, then that's on you. So they understand that there's those bumpers,
Yeah.
to run
Yeah.
into.
Well said, my friend. I think that's so great. I'll just unpack for our listeners, that's a little bit what you shared there. Part of Zingerman's approach, which we use fully, is they create these expert SOPs. And expert SOP is, as you said, Ben, is the idea that anyone you can take off the street, hand them this standard operating procedure, they can follow it and mostly get it right.
Yeah.
80% correct, right? And that just shows that for brand new people, you have the instructions written in a way that anyone could follow them within reason. And then after someone's been around for a long time or been in a role for a long time, they don't need, a 10-minute video or a 12-page list of instructions. All they need is some quick reminders about what the process is. And they call that an expert SOP for someone who's been around. So I love that you're using that terminology with your team, because I do think that just explaining to your team that how to use SOPs in that way makes it very clear to them what done looks like. It's very clear what a finished SOP looks like when you explain to them. We have one for beginners, which we call our beginner SOP. We have one for people who've been around for a while, our expert one. When we have both of those in a place where everyone can find them, we all can follow it and get it right, awesome. Then we're in a good shape. But if we're getting it wrong, let's fix it, adjust the SOP, not make that same mistake twice. And now the instructions are updated with our current best thinking. And so, I just want to bravo to you. I mean, the fact that you're doing that with your team and they're speaking that language, I think is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, like, for those business owners out there that aren't doing this yet, like, and you think it's overwhelming because there's so many things you haven't taught your team to do and you're doing it all yourself, my advice would just be start with one, right? Or start with
Yeah.
one or two things. So my goal was like one SOP a week. We tasked Megan, my manager, with, and literally, like, by the end of the year, you're at 50, 60 SOPs. And she just loved the process. She loved, like, drawing it all out and putting it in our little, Google sheet where everything's connected and all the,
Yeah.
and so for her, it was fun.
Fantastic. Yeah, good
Yeah.
for you. I know you're probably still in the process of figuring this out together with Megan, and you mentioned one way already. So the question I was going to ask is, how do you keep these all updated? And one way you mentioned already is that when someone gets it wrong, then it's an opportunity to go back and review the SOP together. What else are you learning about how to keep these fresh and updated?
Yeah, I'd say the best thing we do to keep them updated is, like I said about the phone inquiry SOP,
Mm,
is just practicing it. I
mm-hmm.
think we'll go about every quarter. We look at the SOPs that are mostly used by our coaches and our team, and we'll say which ones do we want to pull out and just review and look at. And we've done that with a lot of our. So we have what we call rockstar sessions with our clients. Every quarter we go through like this rockstar session. It's a sit down conversation. There's literally like a list of questions they ask. We go back and ask them and say, what else can we add to this to make it more powerful, more useful for the client and the coach, make it a client-centered conversation, that sort of thing. And since doing that, we've developed not only like a new member, like inside the third week of their membership, a new member rockstar session, but we've also guided it towards, like we call it, like a basically like a long-term star or somebody who's been with us for a long time. They're
Yep.
going to be a completely separate set of questions, but before they weren't, right? And so being able to kind of update things like that with our team's feedback and saying, hey, this is maybe not feeling right coming out of my mouth because I'm
Hmm.
talking to this person versus that new person.
Yep.
But I think like
That's a great
reviewing it,
example.
yes, reviewing it
Yeah.
monthly has been good for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I love both of those. One is like when things go wrong, we turn back to the SOP and look for an opportunity to improve it, update it. And then the other thing is just regularly practicing with your team on regular team meetings or once a month or even quarterly, pulling out some SOPs, saying, let's review this one. We haven't looked at this one in a while. Let's go through this one again. Does it still feel relevant? Are we still following these instructions? Or is there anything that anyone's doing here that's better than this? Right? Because we're always looking for just the next best way. And so I think, those are all fantastic tips.
I'll add one more quick thing here that's super
Yeah.
important in those team meetings, and you're the one that reminds me about this all the time, and Mark and the whole BFU team is the team meetings are not meant to be for any informational stuff. So like we get all
Yeah.
the informational stuff sent out in an email the day before, so all that stuff is covered, right? It's time for being able to role play, be able to do these in person, the things you can only do in person, right? And it
Yep.
really like the other week when we were doing our quarterly and annual planning, a question came in to you and it was like, hey, do you do those, the State of the Union sort of address to the team? Do you do those in your team meetings? You're like, nope. We record a video and we send it to an email because we don't want that time, that informational stuff to get in the way of how we can train our team. And so over the last year, we've really, really put it through that filter of like, is this something we could just send in an email versus is this something we want to teach the team and really have that time to connect and do the
Yeah.
one-on-one and all the role playing and stuff. So that's been super powerful. I'll just
Yeah.
add that one little
Well
thing.
said, my friend. I couldn't say it better myself. It's like the team meetings are expensive, especially if you're paying everyone to be there. They're expensive in time and energy. That we really want to use those not for sharing information, but for engaging and connecting and practicing. So good for you. That's huge. All right. Well, we got maybe 5 or so more minutes, and people will kill me if we don't talk about buying a building because now the cat's out of the bag. I think it's a great strategy. So let's just frame this up for folks, which is, you were renting for a long time. You've also been involved in real estate in other ways. So you have other experience buying property. But for many gym owners, our biggest cost is rent. It goes rent and then people, right? And so when you can better control the cost by being your own landlord, it makes a lot of sense. It can be a real win-win. Even if you don't run your gym forever, you'll have that
Yeah.
asset to benefit from. So I think, owning your own space is kind of a no-brainer in most markets most of the time
Mm-hmm.
if you want to run a gym for a long time. So the question I want to cover is not whether or not you should. Most people are probably on the same page that it makes sense if you can.
Yeah.
The question is just how'd you do it? So, and obviously this is probably a longer conversation, but generally speaking, what was your lead up to making this decision?
Yeah. Well, I'll first say that if it wasn't for starting the profit first methodology and
Hmm.
that type of savings first
Yep.
mindset and framing it, we never would have had the amount of money we had to put a down payment down on a building. So that's the first thing we did back in 2017-ish. I think
Yeah.
right
So
before we joined our
yeah,
group, it was,
shout out to Profit First. So
yeah.
go check out the book or Profit First for Micro Gyms if you haven't already, listeners. So great. That was really essential to saving.
Yeah. And then, obviously COVID happened. The building, it was already being used for like a dance studio. So it was like perfect, right? 4,300 square feet. It's the size we needed. It's a big rectangle. And we knew it was going to have to be from the ground up redone, right? We had to do we would have to reconstruct everything to make it work for what we wanted. But the bones were good. And so the way we did it was it was an SBA loan. And it was the 50-40-10. So 50% was the bank loan, 40% is the SBA side, and then you got to bring 10% to the table.
Yep.
And at the time, this is 2020 into 2021, rates were really low.
Yep.
Sorry, it's not like that anymore, but rates were really
Yes.
low for, and we were able to get a construction loan to cover the costs, and kind of that construction loan actually got built into our bank loan. And so it,
Hmm.
cost wise and everything, it made sense for us. Um, and, we were a backup offer for the longest time, and then we became a primary offer, and it got accepted. So a lot of things kind of had to come into place for it to all occur. But I'll tell you, the two cool things that occurred from this was, we own, like you said, we own a lot of residential real estate, so a lot of rentals. Part of this building, how it worked is there's a second piece. Sorry, it's all one parcel. Connected to the building is an actual home, a residential
Hmm.
home. So we rent that out, and actually, um, both both of those pieces of property that we pay rent for the gym.
Hmm.
Epic Fitness pays our holding LLC, and so does the tenant of the home,
Yep.
and that basically covers the mortgage and then a little bit, right? And so
Yeah.
it's a great way to have a fixed rent. Like, we're not going a 3 to 5% increase every year.
Yep.
Um,
You get to decide your own increases.
Although we could, I mean, the landlord
Yeah.
could be a jerk, right, and raise the rent. But we get to control it, right? We can control that. We got a 25-year fixed loan from the bank, and the
Hmm.
SBA matched that. And so it was just one of those things, like, where all the things fell into place. But I'll tell you, in the beginning, like, I didn't think it would be possible until
Sure.
we ran the numbers and realized that it was, because of a 5 year run of, 3 to 4 year runway of just saving for the thing being, what would a down payment look like if we bought $1 million building or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, good for you. I think it's a great lesson to, just for our viewers to hear, like, that's really possible in many markets, right? It's a different story for us at MFF in New York
Yeah.
City. We would need something like a $10 million building minimum,
Yeah.
which, is tough to pull off.
Yeah.
But I think in many markets, I mean, in Salt Lake City is not a tiny market, right? That you can find something that actually is affordable, that you can save for if you're profitable enough. And there's often help things like SBA loans help
Mm-hmm.
to actually make it happen. And there's so much upside. So I guess in the interest of keeping this short, maybe we'll have a whole nother podcast about real estate investing someday. But but in the interest of keeping this short, what tips do you have for people who are considering it, who might want to go down that same path? What are some lessons you've learned?
Um, Make sure you have a great real estate team. So
Mm,
we have an amazing real estate agent that's helped us with all of our transactions, including the commercial transaction that we did for the gym. Somebody you trust. Have a financing team. We didn't use our financing team because we had to go through a different bank, or have a great relationship with a bank, right, or with a
hmm.
lending institution. So we did have a great relationship with the bank that actually held the 50% of the loan. We had a business line of credit with them, so they knew 2-3 years prior to this that we were, they knew everything based on our numbers. They knew how we were operating as a gym. And they knew, what our profit margins were. So they were comfortable lending us the money, and comfortable because we already had kind of an ongoing standing relationship. So I'd say, like, if it was a credit union or a small bank, or, whoever your institution is, if you can get a business line of credit that might only cost 100-200 bucks a year, that might be your best kind of leverage into the, like, having a larger relationship down the line.
Yeah.
Real estate, lending institution, a bank, that sort of thing. And then I'd also say, like, um, have a really good relationship with, like, your top. Obviously, you're gonna have a good relationship with your top 10 clients. I had clients coming to me to ask me if I wanted to, if they wanted to, if they could lend me money.
Sure.
Um, and I didn't need it at the time, but I think there's a lot of us out there that have these
Yeah.
clients that are
Incredibly
either,
loyal clients. Yeah.
yeah, that might be in the financial services, or they just might want to do a lending deal where
Hmm.
you may not be able to make it work without something like that. And that could be a really great relationship to anchor yourself with. And then the last thing I'd say, just to make it short, is, let me see here. Uh, we got lucky because the building we bought was only a half mile from our gym,
Yeah.
but we kind of make that promise with our clients, like, we don't want to move too far away, but don't be afraid of, like, we ended up moving in, like, a little, like, a neighborhood, right? And so, um, we thought initially like this would be a really tough place for people to see us, to people to find us and whatever. But as it turns out, we're in a small community in this neighborhood, but there's 3,000 homes around us within a 1.5 mile radius. And we have the most walk-in traffic that we've ever had. And we were on a busy thoroughway before this.
Yeah.
And we literally had like maybe 1 or 2 walk-ins a month. Now we get between, 10 to 15. So it's a different story, right?
Yeah.
Being like in a community like that is important. Or like don't think that you have to be like on like the busy path. You can be off the road a little bit and be okay.
Yeah, it's a great tip, because, and that's certainly the story of Mark Fisher Fitness. I mean, while we're in Manhattan, we're in a very not busy street. There's 0 foot traffic on our little street. Our neighborhood is a little scary sometimes, but but hasn't stopped us. So I think those are great tips. Great relationship with your bank. I think there's ways you can start fanning the flames of that relationship, planting the seeds now, right? Great relationship with real estate folks. Your clients might be able to help you either with loans or connections, like they want to support you, and just not being afraid of trying out different neighborhoods or different areas, because you can sometimes find a really great deal just slightly outside of where you think you should be. And so those are great tips, Fogel.
Yeah, I just
Those
end
are
with
awesome.
saying like,
Well, yeah,
sorry, I was just
please.
going to end with like, if you think of yourself, you're a destination, right? You're going to be a place where people are going to be like your destination gym. You're not going to be like, a big box gym where you have to be right in
Mm-hmm.
that perfect spot. So.
Yeah, if you can be embedded into an actual community where there's actual like neighborhood around you in many ways, and it's enough buffer that your noise is not a complaint, or the parking isn't a problem, but still, when you can be in that environment, it feels more like a community place, a community center, than it does about some cold big box. So good for you, my friend. Thanks for sharing that, because I know we weren't exactly planning on talking about you buying your building, but I think it's I think it's really remarkable that you were able to do it, and it's a great story for folks to hear that is a possible path for folks if they keep a good profit margin, save up, build those relationships. I think all your tips were super great. Well, thanks. We covered a lot of ground today. We talked about first impressions, training your team to create good first impressions, importance of great SOPs, how to buy a building. This podcast in 25 minutes did a lot of heavy lifting. So for people who want to pick your brain some more or learn more about Epic Fitness, how can they find you online?
Yeah, we're really active on our business page. So it's just on Instagram, it's just Epic Fitness Utah, all one word, or you can go to epicfitnessutah.com. It's Epic Fitness Utah, all one word, on all of our platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, friends, go follow Ben, go follow Epic Fitness, learn from their example. They do a lot of stuff right. So thank you for sharing your wisdom here, Ben. Listeners, if you found value in this podcast, leave us a review, give us 5 stars on all the damn platforms, and email me. Let me know what you want me to talk about, michael@businessforunicorns.com. Thanks again for this great conversation, Fogel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you, man.
I want to remind you about an awesome free resource we created for gym owners. Have you ever found yourself overwhelmed in your gym? Just not sure where to put your efforts to get the next level? Well, head to gymownerreportcard.com and you can access a totally free assessment that will help you identify exactly where to focus your efforts so you can get crystal clear on the next best steps to create the gym of your dreams. One more time, that's gymownerreportcard.com.